Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Anand, editor, Dynamic Manufacturing India magazine. This is day three of Industry Samurai Conference 2021, being held to honor our resilient makers and movers. Today marks an important moment for the conference. It is a great honor and privilege to have as our keynote speaker Dr. Amar Patnaik, Member of Parliament in Rajya Sabha, with us. The Honorable MP's keynote speech, which will follow this introduction, will be followed by a Q&A session with me. Before I invite Dr. Patnaik to speak, let me quickly introduce his illustrious background to you. A former bureaucrat, Dr. Patnaik is a member of parliament in Rajya Sabha from Odisha, representing the Biju Janata Dal. A PhD in institutional economics, he is a member of the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Personal Data Protection and the Finance Committee, and often writes on issues relating to economics, finance, technology, data, and environment. He was also associated with the United Nations and the World Bank for global external audit assignments. He was also the team leader of India's external audit mission to many countries. Dr. Patnaik holds a bachelor's degree in law from St. Stephen's College at Delhi University, MBA in finance and systems from Xavier's Institute of Management, Bhubaneswar, and master's programs in public management from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, Singapore, and the Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University. He was also British Chevening Gurukul Scholar in 2013 to pursue studies at London School of Economics. Dr. Patnaik's scholarly work on public policy has been published and is titled Institutional Change and Power Asymmetry in the Context of Rural India. Dr. Patnaik, a very warm welcome to you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Anandji. A very good morning to all of you who are linked here to this particular program. A Sunday morning. I hope I'm not spoiling your Sunday brunches and programs otherwise. Nevertheless, thank you so much, Anandji, for this generous introduction. And more importantly, I think I must congratulate you for organizing this kind of a function or this kind of an award ceremony to celebrate the industry leaders, the industry, performance, the industry's achievements. This assumes particular importance during this time when we are after, hopefully we have negotiated the pandemic, but we are in the recovery phase. And what kind of recovery? What is the way forward? What are the basic, assumptions that have been questioned during the pandemic for an industry leader or for the industry as a whole? Now, these are some of the questions that are just, in the minds of not just Indian leaders of industry, but also world over. This has been discussed in the IMF, it's been discussed in the World Bank too. Well, I get deep into the aspect of, how industry is important for the economy, no gainsaying that, because while the primary sector like agriculture contributes to ensuring the food security of a country, the industrial sector unlocks the value. It unlocks the value of the potential of the entire country as a whole, or entire region as a whole, or entire state as a whole. It unlocks the value of capital, it unlocks the value of land, it unlocks the value of the skills, the managerial powers, all kinds of things. It actually gives a kind of shape to the aspirations of the people, of the citizens of this country. Therefore, while the primary sector is very important because it gives you the food security, the basic needs of human being, and it is very important, as you would have seen during the pandemic, when actually it is the agriculture which saved us with a growth rate, with positive growth rate, and no mean achievement of about 2 to 3%. But we cannot really, no country can undermine the importance of industry simply because of the fact that it creates several forward and backward linkages. Now, these linkages, forward and backward linkages, act as a multiplier effect to give rise to smaller industries, smaller enterprises, smaller initiatives, and also at the same time, it generates new value chains and even new markets and new differentiated products So basically, the human mind, the impact of all your learning and education comes through these industrial, initiative in industrial ventures that come up. In India, about 20% is to the GDP is contributed. If you look at the August 2021 figures based on the 2011 and 12 constant prices, you would see about 20% comes from agriculture, and the industrial sector contributes about 25%. While the large chunk of contribution to our economy comes from the services sector. Now, these services sector contribute almost about 54% as per the last statistics. Could be more, could be a little less. But the India's growth story, as we all know, has been service-led. Whereas the Chinese growth rate has, as we all know, again, has been manufacturing-led. In fact, not just industry-led, but manufacturing-led. And they have a population more than us, which basically means that their manufacturing is able to create jobs for most of these, or a large number of people, much more than maybe India. Mind you, their labor force participation in China of women is almost double of India, which basically means that they have a labor force which is much more than the Indian labor force. So the Chinese market, manufacturing sector, the industry sector is able to probably provide jobs to the entire labor force or to the majority of the labor force. But in India, even though our labor force participation rate is almost half because the women are not participating, or even if they are in the informal and the unorganized sector, the manufacturing sector has not been probably able to give that kind of job. So I think the biggest challenge for the Indian economy is twofold. One, to ensure that the manufacturing sector grows and grows very fast. While the services sector has done well, and it is mostly dependent on IT and IT-enabled services, I think the hardcore core sectors of the economy have to grow. They are growing since independence, but I think they have to grow much more. While going for technological innovations and improvisations, going away from labor-intensive kind of industrial ventures, the need for creating jobs in the manufacturing sector cannot be overemphasized in our country. And therefore, while the government has brought down the corporate tax rate to one of the lowest in the world, it has given the necessary impetus, the ease of doing business has improved. I think the situation or the ecosystem is ripe for industrial manufacturing resurgence. And with the PLI scheme coming into play in several sectors, which the government has announced, and which is really giving good, dividends in whatever we have seen so far, I think I see a resurgence of the manufacturing sector in the long run in our country, and that would really bode well for the economy. While doing this resurgence and revival and going back to a recovery, as people would say, post the pandemic, I think the most important thing our industry and our manufacturing sector can keep in mind are two things. Number one is that let us be climate conscious. So if you become, I was telling the other day somewhere that quoting Stiglitz, the Stiglitz now says that it is time to kill the GDP. It is time to think about inequity, time to think about climate change, time to think about democracy, because he says these are the three existential crises in the world now. So I think when we are recovering, and the industrial recovery is taking place, as we have seen that the green shoots are there everywhere, I think we have to be mindful of these two things. One, let it be a proper, let's be by common admission, let's all strive to make it a proper V-shaped recovery and not a K-shaped recovery. There are now critics who are saying that it is probably a K-shaped recovery because the rich is recovering, but the poor is falling back. And in fact, some of the about 10 crores of middle class has fallen back into poverty. So we have to be conscious while recovering. The recovery has to be conscious of this particular aspect. And I think our industrial leaders are very, very mature and very, very, conscious of the demands from them, from the ecosystem, from the country. And they would do something about this particular aspect while making a smart recovery. The other important thing is also about the climate change. The world is, I just returned from Europe, and we were discussing at length about the European Union's latest initiative to impose a green border carbon tax. Now, if that happens, all our products which we send to Europe would actually become more expensive. Now, that they are doing in keeping the climate change in mind. In fact, if you know, in Germany, a Green Party-backed alliance is actually forming the government. So we also must move in that direction. And we should make all our innovations, all our recovery, all our value chain systems, values, relationships, and the entire business processes in such a manner that it is green. It will not only, it will not only, to some extent, satisfy the India's ambition of 450 gigawatts of solar power, alternate power, renewable power resources, reliance on these. But what is important is that we have to realize, and the industry leaders have to realize, this is my offering to them, that actually net zero is not net zero, it is net positive. If we are climate resilient now, we climate conscious now, our recovery becomes determined by what is going to affect the climate around us. Then we are addressing the basic existential questions. Some of these existential issues should not come back to bite on the industry later. And therefore, if you can have a recovery path which is climate conscious, I think that would be the smartest thing to do. And we will be the leader in this compared to China or compared to other economies which are manufacturing dependent. The another point which I want to talk about is the circular economy. I think a time has come when we have to think about circular economy. That is how to about the three principles, the three R's that we talk about. That is reduce and reuse and recycle. Our efforts, the industry's efforts in the entire manufacturing value chain systems of different sectors is to definitely reuse and recycle. But most importantly, I think we have to emphasize on reduction of waste. If we reduce waste and ensure that the minimum waste is generated, then I think we would be actually taking care of one of the biggest problems of a smart climate conscious recovery. Then, of course, the question of reuse and recycling would happen. Lastly, I would like to give my advice to the industry leaders, to the industry as a whole, that the government has, I think the government in Parliament, I was there when the government moved the proposal to reduce the corporate tax, a very, very bold move indeed to bring it to 15% for new manufacturing units. It increased the limits of MSME sector, because I think the MSME sector is the sector, particularly the micro, which will provide the jobs that the country needs to provide to reap the benefits of the demographic dividend that we are talking about, lest it becomes a demographic curse. The industry is also has been provided the necessary banking system support, even though there are questions relating to cost of capital and cost of transactions and intermediation. But I think the most important thing for our industry, for manufacturing sector, is that while taking care of the population, the need for jobs, the need for climate, they also have to be bold. They have to be bold in taking risks, because it is the industry which will take risks. It is not the government which will take risks. It is not the small entrepreneur who will take risks. It is the big people, the services sector, the unicorns and all that, they are taking risks. The startup ecosystem has developed so beautifully in our country. But it is the big manufacturing with new innovations. Actually, it can change the face of manufacturing in our country and make signal contribution to the world. So with this, I will end my, I will just briefly speak, however, about Odisha. Now, if you look at Odisha, what we have done in Odisha is that for last 21 years and going to be 22, we have had a very stable political ecosystem in the entire country, I must say. The politics is stable, the policy is stable, which is most important. The policy is in fact progressive. We have one of the best startup policies by common admission in the entire country. Our industrial policy is extremely attractive. We have ensured that there are 6 focus sectors by competitive advantage. And these are the sectors where we want the FDI and even domestic industries to come in. And these 6 focused industries or sectors have already been mentioned in the website. We have a system which is, we believe, in Odisha, we have believed that the entire thing has to be infrastructure-led. Unless you provide infrastructure, why would industry come? And therefore, we developed the private ports. Now, in fact, the Dhamra port, which is handling it is one of the largest and the biggest and in terms of handling cargo, private ports in the country. We also, of course, Paradip. We have a 480 coastline, 2 more ports and 3 more ports are actually coming up. There is the roads connectivity inside the hinterland in Odisha is one of the best. The connectivity to hamlets, to the villages, it is there, to the mineral resource bearing districts. It is there. The railway lines, the railway connectivity is there. It is still being improved. And by the grace of God, and by the the way the geography, the earth, Mother Nature has been very kind to us, we have one of the largest reserves of mineral resources in the country, may it be bauxite, may it be iron, may it be zinc, may it be manganese. So I think the levers of production, levers for having production in a most competitive way are being provided by Odisha. And for those who come here, it's definitely important to have skills. And for example, I think no state in India currently has their largest building in the capital city called the Skill Center. We have built a building, the Skill Tower in Odisha, Bhubaneswar, which is the largest building, because we wanted to emphasize that for us, it is not the BTECs. It's important, the BTECs, the formal engineering degrees, but skill education is more important. And therefore, we have built a brand around skilled in Odisha. They have won awards. So the skilled pool of manpower is available to the industry. They don't have to hire it from outside, and they are industry ready. Now that's a plus. The another important thing is that for all those people who come and work there, they may be coming from outside the state, so they need a congenial atmosphere for their children to study, for their families to live, for a peaceful society. And I think Odisha, that Bhubaneswar is one of the smartest livable cities by many surveys and many industry bodies who have assigned that it is one of the smartest cities. And there is another smart city which is coming up in Rourkela, which is the seat to Rourkela steel plant. Bhubaneswar has turned out to be an education hub. There's All India Institute of Medical Sciences. There's Apollo. It's a health hub. So in terms of providing a congenial atmosphere for industry leaders to operate, for their families to live happily, and for industry to grow without any large labor problems, I think Odisha is the place. And therefore, I would request all industry leaders. It is not that they are not there. We have the Mittals, we have the Tatas, we have the Jindals, both JSPL and JSW. We have the Rumtas, we have. But let it not be only restricted to the mining sector, or let us say the mining processing sector, but let the other focus areas like agro-processing, like fisheries, all these things which have been indicated by us as our focus area, textile and handlooms, where Odisha has the potential to become a leader. Let all of them come and invest in Odisha, and you will not find a more peaceful place I would say on earth, not just India, than Odisha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for a greatly inspiring and encouraging speech, sir. Speaking of encouragement and words of inspiration, sir, that leads me into the first question that I have on behalf of our readers in manufacturing. Sir, as you are well aware that the last few years have been particularly challenging for the industry. Even the markets had barely stabilized after supply chain disruptions caused by the US-China trade war and fuel price fluctuations. Then we were hit by the pandemic, and now the ongoing waves. We have continued to be being battered by one thing after another. So we do need words of encouragement. From that context, what is the message you have for our manufacturers, for our professionals, people on the shop floor in this industry?
See, I am being very, theoretical, or maybe, but as a person who has observed the first wave very closely. as somebody who has spent time trying to get the reverse migrant people back into the states and give them food to eat. You see, the factors of production, as we all know, depends on capital, depends on labor, depends on skills, several other things now have been added to linkages and managerial ability. But you see, the point here is that neither capital can produce goods without labor, nor labor can function without if there is no capital. Both are dependent on each other. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that the first wave showed that when it came to a crisis, the capital somehow could not take care of labor. So the government had to intervene in the form of, it's not the private capital, the government capital intervened. All these things were rolled out. I'm not saying private capital can entirely look after. There have been great instances where private capital has looked after their labor, giving them complete salary, giving them place to stay through the entire period and eating into some of their profit. But there are a large number who didn't look after them, with the result that even today, many of the migrant laborers who had come back to their home states have not returned. And therefore, the pressure on the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, because they want jobs within their own state, their families are not leaving them. Had there been a symbiotic relationship between capital and labor, then I think this situation would not have arisen, because both would have understood each other. I think this is one learning. Let us very frankly admit to ourselves and correct ourselves. If we do that, it would be one of the single most contribution to the entire labor market, labor environment, economy as a whole. And what it would also help in the process, which is very important now, again, the pandemic has taught us that we cannot have 90% of our people working in the informal sector. We cannot have so many people, about 80% in our unorganized sector. We have to formalize them. We have to organize them. The process has now started. What had not happened for ages and decades since independence is now happening. And that's a very positive sign. Once that happens, actually the industry, the capital, I mean, and the labor can live in harmony and can actually, complement each other in spurring growth, even during a crisis. And that is what would be my advice to them. Besides, of course, this is the time when we can attempt new things. Innovation should be there. Digitalization should be there. Climate action should be there. As I said, net zero is not really net zero, net positive. And therefore, if you invest in climate related investment while manufacturing or producing anything, it is going to pay you dividends in the long run. And most of us, most of the industry always plans for the long run and not for the short term. But some of these things which I mentioned are important for the long-term sustenance of the Indian economy, and for it to contribute. Its contribution has to move from 25% at the current level to at least 35% over a period of time, because agriculture is not becoming very remunerative. Agriculture, currently we are producing, our granaries are full. People are not moving away from paddy. A lot of is wasted. We spend about 1,80,000 crores as food subsidy. So slowly we need to produce sufficient to be self-reliant, to be able to meet our food needs domestically, and also to take care of to have a kind of a storehouse, a kind of buffer, which will take care of our crisis situations like the one we've faced. But beyond that is not necessary. So these people have to be given jobs. And if our industry formalizes and organizes these people in tandem with government policies, I think, it would actually augur well for both the industry and for the agriculture and for the country as well.
Thank you, sir. That was tremendously helpful. Very, very, very just what we needed. Which takes me to the second question of what is being needed. What are the main strengths that you see of India's manufacturing sector that we can capitalize on to be globally competitive and move up the global value chain?
See, I think currently the policy ecosystem for manufacturing to take a leap is already set, as I said, in terms of tax rates, in terms of ease of doing business. In terms of even from slowly the labor laws have been changed. We have a labor code. They have been made industry friendly. The skill education in the country has picked up. The policies to attract talent and innovation right at the school level to hotel innovation and all these kind of innovative projects to innovative policies to capture skill, because ultimately it is skill and innovation that will drive the manufacturing sector, that has driven manufacturing anywhere in the world, and that will also do it here. So and then now what has happened is the production link incentive schemes. Now, these are the ones which I think the policy direction is extremely good and ripe for the manufacturing sector, for the industry to take advantage of and gear up manufacturing. There are two issues which are cause of concern. One is, of course, the cost of capital. I still feel in India, the cost of capital is high. In our finance committee, in meetings after meetings with every bankers, I asked this question that I have written a letter to Honorable Prime Minister on this, that we have to discard the British legacy of doing a credit appraisal in a particular way and giving credit in a particular way. We have to now think about a transformational change to bring our cost of capital to the industry at a very lower level. Imagine that people taking from non-banking financial companies for startups and, or let us say smalls, particularly in the micro and small sector, if they have to pay 20% and above as the cost of capital, how can you have an ROI return, your own return of an investment more than 20%? It is not possible. Therefore, I think the biggest concern for all of us should be the cost of capital. I am a great believer that a lot can be done to decrease the cost of capital to our industry in our country through a market-determined mechanism and not by giving subsidies from the government. I think government policy space has been exhausted. It has been done enough. There could be small changes in income tax rules and customs rules and all. Those can be ironed out. But I think these are the big questions. The second question is again the transaction cost. We have to reduce our transaction costs. Transaction cost of doing business. The ease of doing business is there, but many of our practices can actually be done in a manner with less cost. And that is what is going to actually give space to the manufacturers to actually price their products later on. There are, the changes like the current changes, the labor reforms has been carried out. Our labor wages are very competitive. Our, the bill discounting, the trades platform, the bills getting automatically into the platform, particularly very helpful for the MSME sector. All these are taking shape and taking root. So I think the climate, the ecosystem is gearing up for a resurgence. I can use the word renaissance, but we have to take advantage of this. We have to be, these two issues have to be addressed through a market-determined mechanism. The industry should think about it, how to go about it. I have already written to the Prime Minister and have been raising it with all bankers. I think this is one area which we have to address. But I think ultimately, the industry leaders of ours who have sustained our economy for so long, they have been there through our independence movement, to the various revolutions that we have had in agriculture revolution, industrial revolution, in the services revolution, their contribution. I think they have to now take charge. They have to become more bold and conquer the world. That is what I would say.
Absolutely, sir. And as an editor and writer, I completely wholeheartedly agree with this point of our industry leaders taking lead. And we have examples in Japan and Korea where
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So big industrialists came together, and absolutely, sir. So this is for the final question, sir. With your permission, I'll invite my colleague Dinesh Mishra, who's from Odisha. He has questions on behalf of readers in Odisha that he wanted to ask you. Dinesh, your mic is.
Okay. Anand, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Is there a problem with your video?
No, 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 no. Just a second. Okay, is it like? Thanks, Anand. Thank you, Dr. Patnaik. Namaskar. I have one question for you. That what are the scope and opportunities for manufacturers in Odisha who want to, come to Odisha and manufacture in different industry? What are the scope and opportunities right now?
See, as I said, we have already identified 6 focus sectors where I think we have the competitive advantage. So anybody, any private capital trying to invest in these sectors, I think it starts with a huge lift right from the beginning, because I think we have the competitive advantage there in terms of land, labor, capital, and skills. These sectors, as you would see, they are not in the high cost hard manufacturing sectors, but they are in agro processing, food processing, handloom, textiles. You see, you must realize that agro processing is the least developed market in India, whereas there are countries in South America whose main thing is agro processing. Whereas we are potentially so much by a simple, investment in very innovative technology, we can actually be the leader in this. So I think Odisha, these are the sectors which have been identified. We have the SWIFT portal. You have to one-step thing. Many states have come out with a one-step, platform or a portal where you can apply and this. But what is Odisha's case? How it is different is that right from end to end, the hand-holding is done, and all the clearances and everything are around this portal. So your transaction cost comes down. Previously there used to be a question of lands, land banks not being there. So now we have developed the land banks. There are about 8 industrial clusters, and there are many such industrial, small parcels which have been, kept together at one place, so that if the industrialist comes, he can be given that land immediately. So that problem has also been solved. If you look at connectivity, which is important, both in terms of hard connectivity, air, rail, and road transportation, it is there. Now, IT connectivity, we have the software technology park. As I said in the parliament yesterday, we are the second largest exporter of software to the world. So connectivity is also not an issue. We know that Bhubaneswar has come out as a hub for health education. So people who the top leaders or top managers, if they get posted in Bhubaneswar and Odisha, they shouldn't feel that their children can't be studying in good schools, or they cannot have access to good health, because we have the All India Institute of Medical Science, we have Apollo, we have AMRI, we have everything, and the IIT and the IIM in Sambalpur. So I think and another thing is, what industry needs is labor. Besides capital, they will need labor. Now, the labor is the Odisha offers the best labor to the world, because number one, they are not aggressive, they are very peaceful. Then number 3 is that now that the skill education has been given a huge push in Odisha, and the ITIs have now almost become like engineering colleges. Those who are coming out of this ITIs are now very smartly skilled, and they are available, they're industry ready, so they can be procured. So the cost of labor would be also less, and managing them would be less, because there will be local labor. And the dexterity or the skills of, micro kind of work. You see, traditionally, because of our temple architecture, because of our miniature paintings, because of our filigree works, our women force who does most of this work are already available. Unfortunately, no one was using them. So any kind of minute miniature work to be done, which is which normally would require a high level of probably magnification, some of it actually gets done by bare eye, because of the way the traditions they have taught. This has not been explored. Let's say in chip industry, in handloom industry, in crafts industry. So this is also one area where the labor is immediately available, and I think they are not as expensive as anywhere else. They are much cheaper. So I think all these places, Odisha, in a very sound footing for having an industrial resurgence. actually people, and then most importantly, previously people used to know Odisha about food deprivation, death, hunger, death, and all this kind of thing. Now you see that particular belt, which used to be called the the place of hunger, or the people where people used to supposedly used to eat mango kernels and all. Now that has become the rice bowl of the country. The rice bowl of the country, not just of Odisha. That entire irrigation channel in Indravati project, because of Bargarh and Sambalpur and Western Odisha and Kalahandi and Korapur, it has become the rice bowl. In fact, they produce so much of rice that the FCI is unable to procure them. So there is no, so this was a big issue. Now hunger has been taken care of. Health, because of the new government, Honorable CM's policy, which is a very unique policy compared to the Ayushman Bharat, that is, you have the Biju Swasthya Kalyan. It is like a right to health kind of a thing. You just go to a hospital and you get it free. So government hospital free, and private hospital, some 200 empaneled, also free outside. So this kind of surrounding has created a space for young people also, who used to earlier spend out-of-pocket expenses some 60% of their income for health. Now they don't have to do it. So educational hubs is there. There is now space for people to think, innovate, work properly, contribute to the growth. So if the industry comes and investment comes, I think now they would have no difficulty in engaging these people, reaping the benefit of the situation and stability that has been created in health, education, poverty, political climate everywhere, and move ahead. So, and that would actually, you see, I believe that unless the states grow, the country cannot grow. A few states can't lead country, those times are gone. So wherever there is a state's potential is there, they should be allowed to actually grow much more and much farther. So what would happen is that it would give an impetus to the country's growth. And I include not only Odisha in it, I include Bihar in it, I include Assam in it. So the way the structure is that those states who have created a very, very sound and reasonable and enduring climate for industries to come up, the center should actually facilitate that particular process. The relationship between center and states are very important for the industrial climate also. And therefore, I think, and as far as that is concerned also, Odisha has been very good in that. There has never been a strong bickering between the center and the state on any issue. Which is, of course, the Odisha has been asking for its share of divisible pool of taxes and cess and all that, but there has been any great policy difference and all that. So I think, to your question, whether what Odisha has done, I think we are very well placed for making an industrial resurgence in the country.
With that powerful message, this highly engaging session comes to a close. Dr. Patnaik sir, many, many thanks for your illuminating words. Your words are going to inspire and encourage our readers for a long time to come. Thanks on behalf of Meshmix Media, Dynamic Manufacturing Magazine, and the entire manufacturing sector, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Namaskar. All the best of you. Have a good Sunday.
We enjoyed it, sir.